Obviously, check your email very often because there'll be a lot of communication via email, okay? And announcements and Blackboard you have to check out every day. All right, so where were we last time? I'm asking you, I think we were we on the second recorded lecture? No, we're still in the first one, right? Is that right? We looked at the invertebrate groups, right? I think we got to fish. That what we said? Yeah, kind of sharks. Okay. Well, yeah, I now remember. The last thing we did is watch this video. Is that right? Okay. So this is one of the few mechanistic things that we look at in this course. And I would like you to be able to understand and describe this process. So remember, gills are very efficient machines for exchange of gases, such as oxygen and CO2. Remember, there is not just oxygen to be taken in animals. There is a lot of CO2, carbon dioxide, that we produce, we and all other animals, during metabolism. Whenever we produce energy, our body needs to produce energy all the time. A product of that process is CO2, and CO2 needs to leave your body, needs to leave the body of animals. So, exchange of gases in both directions, oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, okay, from the respiratory system. And so the respiratory system here are gills made of lamellae, and each lamella is like a plate, looks like a plate like that, is very vascularized. And the key in this system is the counter-current flow. So the flow of water and the flow of blood are opposite to one another, and this ensures that at any given time, the concentration of oxygen, we call it partial pressure, as the video said, is always higher in the water than in the blood. And so oxygen will diffuse very easily from the water to the blood vessels, okay, through the lamellae. And carbon dioxide is always more concentrated in the blood than in the water, so it will get out by diffusion in the opposite direction. All right, so this is the principle. It's not that hard, okay, as the video explained to us. So here we were starting to talk about fish, okay, and we defined the fish. Did we talk about the heart circulation in fish? So heart, excuse me. We will look at this course at the heart evolution here. Heart in fish is pretty simple. Only is made of 2 chambers. And then we will see how from 2 becomes 3 and then becomes 4. Our heart is 4-chambered heart. And this 4-chambered heart that we have is a very sophisticated machine that has evolved to almost, actually, our heart is almost 2 hearts, 2 separate hearts joined together. Because we have 2 complete separated circulations, okay? One is the pulmonary one, the lung one, and the other one is the systemic, the circulation that goes through the whole body except for the lung. Okay, separated. We'll see that. Okay, we'll look at that. Now here the heart is simpler. It only has 2 chambers. It's a 1 heart with 2 chambers, and the circulation is 1 circulation that goes through the capillaries and then the body, to the gill capillaries and then to the body. So what happens is that the blood, as you know, the blue is the unoxygenated, the red is the oxygenated blood. This is a circulation. Wherever you want to start from, that's fine. We can start from, see, the heart, the heart pumps the blood to the gill capillaries, the blood that is going to be pumped to the gill capillaries in unoxygenated blood, it comes from the periphery of the body of the animals. We call it systemic capillaries, or the systemic portion of the body of an organism is everything else other than the respiratory system. So unoxygenated blood descends to the gill capillaries. It gets oxygenated there in a very efficient way, as we see, and then it gets pumped to. This pumping continues after traveling through the gill capillaries to the systemic capillaries, to the periphery of the body. Okay, and then of course all the cells are going to uptake oxygen, and therefore the blood becomes unoxygenated. So that's the circulation. Is pretty simple, and the heart is still a simple machine. Okay, that's the heart of fishes. Now, fishes have evolved a jaw. And remember what, anybody remembers what the jaw comes from? Does it come out of the blue from nothing, or is a modification of a pre-existing structure? Check 1 or check 2? Check 2. What is that pre-existing structure? Anybody remembers? No? Remember the supports for the gill openings, the anterior supports for gill openings. They transform over time, over billions of years, and they become the jaw. Okay, we saw that in a previous slide. Okay, here. Okay, so these anterior supports with yellow structures they transform over time and become the jaw, the bones of the jaw. Okay, so these are fishes are jawed animals for the first time. There are two classes of fishes that we're going to look at. There is cartilaginous fishes as well as bony fishes. Who are the cartilaginous fishes, which evolved first? These are fishes that the vertebrae are made of cartilage. Cartilage is a different tissue than bone. It's flexible, as you know, because we do have some areas of our body that have cartilage. Here I can flex it, right? I can pull your ears when you don't know answers. Flex it very easily. While bone is not flexible. And there are other differences that we're going to talk about pretty soon here. I have a table of differences. Okay, who are the cartilaginous fishes? There are sharks. Okay? Sharks, but also rays, mantas, this kind of organisms. They have several differences with fish, not just the fact that their skeleton is made of cartilage rather than bone. Have you ever seen all the gill openings on a fish like this? On a pufferfish, on Nemo. Does Nemo have this? Thing is here. You don't see them, okay? Because Nemo has a structure, as a flap of skin that covers the gill openings. Okay, it's called operculum, as we will see. These fish don't have that, so you see the actual several gill openings. The other important difference, which I'm going to tell you when in a minute I get to bony fishes, is the absence of a particular organ. Okay, and we were talking about, I guess, last time how sharks swim. You know, sharks don't go up and down very quickly like this, like Nemo does, right? Sharks go in circles, or to get higher, they go higher in the ocean or lower in the ocean. They kind of swim their way up this way or circle. They maintain their buoyancy thanks to very oily liver. Okay, that guarantees their buoyancy in water, but they don't have any specific organ to aid in maintaining their buoyancy or going up and down very quickly. Okay, these are examples of the jaws and cartilage skeleton. All right. This was the anatomy of an artifact. We already saw this. Okay, with all the fins, the type of fins that you also find in fish, bony fish. Sharks can get very big. There are also sharks that eat plankton just like whales. Okay, so these are not the type of shark that they will eat you or other animals. It's not a predator in that regard. It feeds on plankton. There are several species like that. Mantas and rays are, and manta rays and rays also belong to this group. Okay, cartilaginous fish. Okay, now we're going to talk about bony fishes. Okay, and when we talk about bony fishes, there are two groups that we're going to look at. The group of ray-finned fish as well as the lobe-finned fish. And you have to be very attentive today because the lobe-finned fish are super important. They represent a passage. We'll see what kind of passage they represent. Okay? And they're so interesting also to talk about. Okay, first of all, I want to give you an overview, as I told you a minute ago, of the differences between cartilage and bone. Cartilage is flexible, is a kind of a gel-like tissue, while bone is a mineralized tissue. First difference, and that's what makes it flexible, that's what makes it very hard. Now, there are other differences. Cartilage is not vascularized, does not get vascularization. It's avascular, we say. This is one example. A means non. And the fact that it is avascularized means that it cannot remodel or regenerate like bone does. Cannot heal, okay? If you don't get the necessary nutrients from the blood, you cannot regenerate. So it's a stable tissue, we say, okay? While bone can remodel, can regrow, okay? To some extent, because it's vascularized. The other difference is that there are no nerves in the matrix of cartilage, okay? So you don't really feel when your cartilage is being worked on. If I try to cut a piece of your ear, you will feel hurt, but it's because you have nerve terminations in the skin, okay? Or you will bleed, but the bleeding will come from the skin and not from the cartilage itself, okay? While bone has nerves in the matrix. The matrix is, these tissues have a lot of extracellular material in them. Okay, they're made of cells, but also a lot of extracellular material made of water, lots of proteins and collagen. Collagen, we have learned is the protein that supportive protein, but also sugar chains, a lot of molecules in there, not cells, just molecules. Okay, proteins and sugars and so on. So this is called the matrix, extracellular matrix. All right, so these are the differences. And let's look at the anatomy of a bony fish. Bony skeleton. And as I told you, the gills, you don't see the gill openings because there is a flap of skin that you can see it moving. It's known as operculum. You have to know this word for me. And you have all the things that we looked at already. And there is one very super important organ in these fishes that we have not seen in cartilaginous fishes, and it's called swim bladder. It's not a bladder in the sense that our bladder is not used for the use that we have in our body. It's called bladder because bladder in general is a sac. Okay, so it's a bladder, it's a sac, but it's an air sac. Okay, and it's called swim bladder most commonly. And that's an organ that serves for buoyancy and rapid movements, up and down movements. Nemo can do this thanks to this little balloon that can inflate and deflate very quickly, okay? And so can go up and down very quickly. And this is a super important organ because, you know, we come from fish, right? We have learned that. But as adults, we don't respire, we don't breathe through gills. What is the organ we breathe through? Lungs. Lungs, if you zoom into lungs, lungs are sacs. Now, they're not just one sac, they have very small sacs in them. They're called alveoli. If you were to guess, you know, structures don't come out of the blue, out of nothing. They're always a modification of a pre-existing thing. If you were to guess where our lungs come from, we come from fish, from this type of fish, this kind of swim bladder. What would you guess? Where do they come from? Which organ of this fish?
Swim bladder.
Pretty obvious, okay? So our lungs, okay, comes from this. All right, so this is skeleton of bone, okay? And now, regarding bony fishes, as I told you, we have to talk about two groups, ray fin and lobe fin. So the word says it all. These two types of fins are slightly different. In the ray fin fish, the fin, if we look, we're going to look at images in and near, the fin, if you zoom it in, has a series of very thin bony spines, okay, many, which are also interconnected by a thin web. A lobe fin is a fin that is very fleshy, has a fleshy lobe over a single bone. It develops over a very single strong bone. And you have to know these differences very well for me. Okay? So this is the fin ray, and this is the lobe fin. Okay. So this is a ray fin fish. Okay. With the fin rays, and this is a lobe fin fish. And you see how here there is a series of very thin rays, okay, that develop on a series of small bones. And here you see a very thick bone, a series of other kind of also strong bones, on which the fin develops. So this is the lobe fin, and this is the ray fin. I invite you to look at the names of these bones here in this lobe fin. Humerus, ulna, and radius. Do we have these bones in our arm? Yes, you know. Who has broken their arm? Anytime? Which one? Which bone? So, we have these bones. So this already tells you something, okay? So the lobe fin is very important because it's probably the organ that transforms into a limb, kind of forelimb, as we will see. All right, so are lobe fin fish still existing? Yes, they are. Most of them are extinct. And there is one species, one group, there's few species in it, the group of coelacanth. Who has ever heard about coelacanths? These fish are like a wonder of nature because we thought that this fish was extinct until like 50 years ago or something like that. This is a very typical long fin fish. It still has all those bones that are also common to our fin. And we have found many fossils of this fish from like something like 500 million years ago. And we thought it was extinct because nobody had ever found a living fish until I want to say it was around 1950, I can't remember when. It was fish, I think I have it in a slide here, sometimes it's hard to find to remember dates, but it was actually fished out from fishermen in an African coast. It was a strange, very ugly fish, ugly looking fish. These fishermen knew was something there that they had never seen before, and they were smart enough to bring it to attention of a nearby director of a museum. So it was observed by experts, and they said, "Oh my goodness, this is a fish that we have never found, and we thought it was extinct." Because they compared this fish, the anatomy of this fish, with all the fossil record, and it was identical to the fossil record. And so these coelacanths are known as living fossils because not only we thought they were extinct, and in fact they are extant, which means still living, but also because their anatomy is unchanged. It's like they have not evolved. Probably they have not evolved because they tend to live in deep ocean and in niches that are kind of like still unchanged, and they have not changed pretty much at all in many millions of years. Okay, so coelacanth, living fossil. Okay, this is an example of living lobe fin fish, but we'll see there are other examples as well. Now, this is another comparison I wanted to give you between a ray fin and this is a coelacanth fin, which is a typical lobe fin, and this is the forelimb of a human. Okay, so same bone. Okay, same set of bones. Now, the most abundant group of living fish are ray fin fish. So your Nemo is a ray fin fish. The lobe fin fish, the living species are very few. Okay, so we know the coelacanths are still around. Okay, we have discovered that not too long ago. And there is another group as well that is living, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Okay, we talked about ray fin fish having and bony fish in general having an operculum, which is a flap of skin that covers the actual gills. Okay, and this flap can be moved to kind of let water in. We'll see that when we see actual videos of fish. I'm sure everybody has observed that. All right, now let's talk about for a minute more about the swim bladder. Okay, we already said that the swim bladder is a super important organ in these bony fishes, and is a buoyancy organ. By the way, the swim bladder is also called gas bladder because it fills up with air, basically. More rarely fish maw as well, okay? Or air bladder as well. So you may find all these, these are all synonyms, okay? All right, so this is an example of how the gas bladder in most of the living bony fish have a gas bladder that is not connected with the external air, external wall. So where does this gas, this air come from? It comes from a very strong net of blood vessels that can release the gas or take up the gas very quickly from the gas bladder. Okay? That's how it works. Not connected with outside. But in some fishes, though, this gas bladder may have a connection with actual with the esophagus area. Okay, so there is two types of bony fishes, ray fin fish. One is, and these are most of the ray fin fish. Okay, they have no connection between the gas bladder or swim bladder, whatever you want to call it, and the esophagus. So the swim bladder gets its air from circulation, blood circulation. Blood can transport gas. But there is another type of fish, which is less abundant, that has a connection there between the gas bladder and the esophagus. Okay? And in some of these fish, actually, the gas bladder is not just one chamber anymore, but a split in two. It reminds you that we have two lungs, right? And so there is a group of fish known as lungfish that have this situation, lungfish. Have you ever heard about a lungfish? Okay? There are some fishes around that in fact have lungs, okay? And this, again, is strong evidence that in fact our lungs come from this swim bladder, okay? Okay, so as I told you, there's two groups of bony fishes, the ray fin fish and the lobe fin fish. And we have seen that in the ray fin fish, you have this disconnected situation, while in the lobe fin fish, you have this connection, okay? Connection between the esophagus and the gas bladder. And in some of these fishes, the gas bladder is even split in two. So nowadays, the only living examples of lobe fin fish that we already given an example is the coelacanth, are besides the coelacanth, the lungfish. So here you have a group of fish that not only does it have the lobe fins, but also has a kind of a lung, has the split air bladder connected to it at the esophagus, where it can actually gasp air from the outside. Okay, this is a lungfish. It gasps air from the outside. Okay, so the coelacanth, don't get confused. The coelacanth are not lungfish. Okay, the coelacanth, they're just lobe fin fish. In fact, the coelacanth lives in the deep ocean and hides there. It doesn't need to come up to the gasps of air. So they're not lungfish. Okay, they're just lobe fin fish. Now, the lungfish is the group that really is interesting because besides that lobe fin, which really resembles our forelimb, right? It also has this kind of primitive lung, which derives from the gas bladder, okay? And 1938, that's when coelacanth was, this was the story of the coelacanth. I have a coelacanth video, but I think I'm going to skip over it. That shows you how the coelacanth and, you know, when coelacanth was found and everything else. But I already told you the story. So in 1938, before 1938, we didn't know the coelacanths were in fact extinct. We thought they were extinct, okay? Until we fished it. Now we're going to talk more about the lungfish, and I do want to show you a nice video about lungfish. Lungfish, so they have these structures, a primitive lung, and they have lobe fin. Okay, this is a lobe fin, and they live mostly in Africa, South America, and Australia. And most of them do have the split, so a pair of lungs, just not just one, but two chambers, okay, two bladders there, connected to the esophagus. And this is the type of fish that you can drown, because these fishes have adapted to utilize that gasp of air, not just for buoyancy, but now for respiration. And if you keep them too much in the water, they will drown on you. Okay? So there is one video here that I want to show you. This is a salamander fish, typical land fish. And the video shows you what this, how this fish is able to survive even in a dry environment. When water goes away, if there is water, I'll stay in water, but if water goes away, he's able to create a chamber around himself underground, and it keeps just a little bit of air connection, let's say, to the outside, where it can actually get air and breathe through its lungs. Okay, so it's interesting. This is fish that you can commonly find in Africa, and it actually Africans eat this fish. Sometimes they will find this fish underground that has kind of formed that burrow underground, and when they find it, they will it forms like a cocoon around itself. They'll just eat it. So it's a good fun. You don't have to go fishing.
Fish that lives on land. The lungfish, also known as salamander fish, is a type of freshwater fish that is known for its ability to live on land, without water, for months on end, and sometimes even years. As its name suggests, the lungfish have a highly evolved respiratory system that can take oxygen straight from the air, just like land animals do. In fact, some species of lungfish are so used to breathing air that they slowly lose the function of their gills as the fish approach adulthood. While they still live in water, they need to regularly come up to the surface for air. These fish can even drown if they are held underwater for a long time. The lungfish have elongated bodies, like eels, with thread-like pectoral and pelvic fins, which they use to swim and crawl along the bottom. They generally inhabit shallow waters, such as swamps and marshes, but they are also found in larger lakes. When there is water, the lungfish behaves like any other fish, swimming in the waters and eating small fish and crustaceans on the bottoms of ponds and streams. But when the dry season hits, the lungfish burrows itself deep into the mud, digging out a path by taking mud into its mouth and forcing it out its gills. After the fish has reached a comfortable depth, it will stop digging and secrete a mucus out of its skin that hardens to form a protective cocoon around it. Only the mouth is left exposed for breathing. For its long hibernation, the lungfish will greatly reduce its metabolism and live off the muscle tissues in its tail. Once the water returns and the mud softens, the lungfish will wriggle out of its burrow. Some reports claim that the fish can stay underground in dried mud for as long as 4 years. Lungfishes are found only in Africa, South America, and Australia. In Africa, the fish is eaten by the locals, who would often dig out the fish from dry soil. The fish is said to have a strong taste, and is not enjoyed by all.
Could you guys see the video?
Yeah. It was like almost at the end that it disappeared.
The way I went by. It was just hoping. Alright, so this is basically a fish that starts breathing air through different structure. Many of these fish still have the gills, right? Kind of like the gills are kind of obsolete in this fish. They're not really used for respiration anymore, or partially, very partially. The main organ for respiration is this lung, what has become a lung now. Okay? And so, I told you most of the groups that belong to lungfish are extinct. We have a lot of fossil record of forms that are even more, forms that are forms that start going more out of the water, exploring land, because with a low fin, I can literally walk, kind of walk with that fish. It's very low, we have a strong bone, so the fin can kind of do this, okay? And so some intermediate forms here can start literally walking first on the bottom and then getting a little bit out of the water, It's not a problem because now I can grasp air. That's my mean of respiration through air coming into the lungs. And there are many forms that are extinct, as I told you, that slowly over time, that fin is moving and becoming and transforming into a leaf. Okay? This one, look at this one. Acanthus tega is a very symbolic type of fossil, emblematic, I want to say, that Acanthus tega means fish with legs, because this fish really has already evolved limbs. Okay, it's still kind of a fish because it lives in water, but it breathes air, in fact, and also pretty much works. And the fins have already transformed pretty much into limbs. We know that from fossil evidence. This is another one. This is Italic, another emblematic one. It's a fish with legs. The fins are almost limbs. This is Acanthus tega. Of course, they are not living anymore. These are artistic reconstitutions here, drawings taken from the bone, the fossil bone remains. Okay, and so Acanthus tega means fish with legs. Okay, this is really the organism that represents a passage here. It's moving to land, so it's a passage between aquatic and terrestrial life, right? This is the organism that really made it possible for us to evolve. We are terrestrial, right? We know this is the vertebrate that we come from. Okay, so lobe fin fish, and in particular lobe fin fish that also are lungfish. They are that group that represents the passage. So vertebrates are born in water. Okay, fish are born in water, but then they become terrestrial through this passage group. And this passage group starts moving on to land more and more, so much so that eventually it becomes a terrestrial animal, terrestrial group, which is the group of amphibians, which is the next group. And we are therefore now tetrapods. We're not fish anymore. We have 4 limbs. Those fins have become limbs, adapted to walking on land rather than swimming in water. So it's more efficient to have a form that is a limb, not a fin anymore. And amphibians, as I said, is the first group. Amphibian, the word amphibian, amphi means dual, and bios, bios come from the word bios, life. So these animals, the name suggests that have a double life. What this double life refers to? Refers to the fact that yes, they are terrestrial, they're considered terrestrial, but in reality, can they get away from a body of water? Have you ever seen a frog in a desert? Well, dry out. The kind of frog it lives close by, nearby a pond. It gets into the pond a lot, gets out, but kind of get used to living really close, or in a very, very moist place. Okay? So in that regard, these have a dual life. And there are 3 living groups of amphibians. There are the frogs and toads, the newts and salamanders, and the caecilians. Okay? You're very acquainted with this kind of ones. The newts and the salamanders are the tailed ones, while the frogs and toads are the tailless ones. Okay, they don't have a tail, as adults. And the caecilians are these guys. You probably think that this is a worm. This is not. This is an amphibian. Can an organism lose a feature that has acquired in evolution? Yes, this is legless, okay? It has just lost them because it is in an environment where probably environmental exposure pressure, where it's more efficient to just slide that rather than walk. Now it does have remains of those limbs, okay, in its body. Now, as you can imagine, passage from aquatic life to terrestrial life implies some challenges there. Okay, because if I have a bone, a skeleton that is adapted to life in water, you know, when you are in water, you go to the pool, you feel lighter, right? Why you feel lighter? There is a force that, because of the density of water, keeps you up. Okay, you feel lighter. You have less weight, so you don't have to, and you feel the gravitational force less on your body because of that force that pushes you up, and therefore your bone, your skeleton doesn't have to be so heavy. Okay, you don't have to overcome all the gravitational force. So that's one of the first challenges. Having a bone system that is too light, it may not be ideal on land. And so the bones become stronger and become more supportive against gravity. So that's, because otherwise I would have a problem, okay? So the strong exoskeleton bone, the exoskeleton, endoskeleton, I'm sorry, endoskeleton becomes stronger, more supportive, especially against the force of gravity. Now, there are other problems to overcome because as a fish, I'm in water, no problem. I can release my gametes in water, and the gametes will find each other, and sperm travels through navigating through flagellum, finds the right sperm, fertilization happens. And how do I do it if I am living on land? Now, some species have evolved, some species of amphibians have evolved internal fertilization coupling. But for instance, in this picture, it's misleading. It seems like these male and female frogs are mating. In reality, they're not. What's happening here, something very rare in the world of animals, where the male is at the right place at the right time when you need him. What's happening here is the male is releasing the sperm at the same moment as the female is releasing the eggs. And so there's more chance that egg and sperm are right there, same place to cross-fertilize, right? And so that's what's happening. There is not internal fertilization for these species, okay? But there are some species that do have internal fertilization. Now, the problem is that the egg either forms in water or is, the egg either it forms in water or forms in the body, the fertilized egg, or in the body of a female, it needs to be released in the environment and develops in the environment. And the problem here is that the egg doesn't have a protection against dehydration. So it needs to develop in water, in fact. And yes, there is a little bit of jelly that it coats the eggs or the fertilized eggs, but that's about it. So in order for these organisms to reproduce, they really have to be close to water. That's a caveat there. They cannot move away from water. This is one of the main points for which they have to have this dual life. They have to be close to water. Okay? And another problem also is dehydration. Okay? As we will see, other groups have evolved tougher skin, very, very tough, very, very waterproof, that avoids dehydration. But this group, besides, they have a very thin skin, and in fact, they even breathe mostly through skin. Yes, they have lungs, but they breathe a lot through their skin that is so thin that allows for gas exchange. They do have a layer of mucus that coats their skin, but it's a thin layer, and they still need to be constantly going into water bodies to kind of rehydrate, okay, maintain that mucus, layer of mucus hydrated. All right, you know, some of them produce toxins. When you see in nature yellow and black pattern, it's always the same message. Yellow and black. Stay away from me. Wasp, they can sting you, right? Who is also yellow and black? Bees.
The bumblebee, the snake.
Snakes, the color snakes. Isn't that crazy how nature has a code for stay away from me, right? So it's the same pattern of color, okay? If you see this pattern of color, always stay away, okay? It's a message. It's a natural law. All right, so as I told you, gas exchange for some reason in amphibians through lungs is not the major gas exchange. It's not the bulk of gas exchange, oxygen and CO2. The bulk of gas exchange actually happens through skin, okay? Nonetheless, there is a respiration, of course. All right, and the other problem that I must consider when I'm moving to land, it's another problem related to the physics of how sound is transmitted. In water, sound is propagated much more efficiently than in air. If you're scuba diving and you hear like a strong noise, which would be a ship, and you say, "I gotta get out of here." No, you're okay. It's very far away. It's just that the propagation is so efficient, okay, in water. That's not as true in air. In air, the propagation of sound is much less efficient and slower, and so somehow I have to develop a system, or evolution puts a pressure to evolve a system to hear better in air. Otherwise, I'm going to be pretty soon gone, because predators are going to get to me before I can hear that they're coming towards me. And so here you have evolution of a more sophisticated type of hearing system, where you have the evolution of the tympanic membrane. No, we have the tympanic membrane. What's the tympanic membrane? It's a very delicate membrane. You should be always careful when you put your swabs in your ear, not to put it too deep in, because you can perforate it. If you perforate it, it's pretty much gone. That is an amplifier, okay? And so you can amplify. If you can amplify that sound, now you can hear predators and you can survive. So here we have the evolution of this membrane. Very important. Okay, to summarize, modern amphibians all require water at some stage in their life cycle, so they have this dual life. So mostly, the caveat is reproduction. Lungs are not as efficient as other vertebrates, so we'll see they come later. They're real terrestrial, 100%. In fact, the skin serves as a respiratory organ as well. And they have an improved heart compared to fish, and we'll see in a minute the evolution of the heart in amphibians. Okay, the other thing that tells us for sure that amphibians, in fact, were fish and that passage, what a better demonstration that that is true when you look at a metamorphosis, a frog metamorphosis. You know that there is a transformation that happens. Frogs are not born as the adult looks like, but they're born like a fish, basically, that even breathes with gills. And then they undergo a strong transformation, okay, known as metamorphosis, to become adult, that is completely different from the first organism that hatches from the egg. Okay, so I'm not going to go too into the details. All right, so as I told you, we looked at the heart in fish. It was a two-chambered heart, and we come from fish, so we start from that. In amphibians, the heart becomes three-chamber heart, and then it becomes almost a four-chambered heart in reptiles, and finally becomes a four-chambered heart in mammals and birds as well. So in this three-chambered heart, here in this picture, I like it because it shows you a purple type of blood that we have never seen before. Can you close a little bit those as well, those lines? So this is a 3-chambered heart with 2 chambers on the top and 1 on the bottom. What's happening in this heart? There is some sort of separation there, but in sort of a beginning of a double circulation. But what's happening? What do you think this purple colored blood means? Why is it purple?
Oxygen.
What did you say?
The blue?
It's the blue, but it's not blue, it's purple. Why is it purple?
It's
Any-
good part, I mean, the good part, what's it called, there's a bad.
It's a mixture. It's a mixture of the blue and the red. It becomes purple. Okay, what it tells you is that this is the beginning of a heart, a more efficient heart that wants to separate the pulmonary circulation, the circulation of blood that goes to the lungs, from the circulation that goes from the systemic circulation goes to all the rest of the body. But it's not very efficient because of not complete separation. There is mixture. So what's sent to the body is a little bit mixed blood, not completely oxygenated. Okay, it's not so good, right? You don't want to send to the body, to the cells of the body that need a lot of oxygen, partially unoxygenated blood. Okay. So it's a beginning there of a more sophisticated heart, but it's not there. And we'll see how. You see, this is our heart. Do you see any purple? Do you see any mixture of unoxygenated and oxygenated blood? Absolutely not. You have that, the unoxygenated blood. This is a schematic representation here, okay? It's more complicated than this, but all the unoxygenated blood coming from the body goes to the lung, gets oxygenated, and 100% of oxygenated blood coming from the lung goes to the heart first and then to the body. That's the best machine, most efficient machine. No mixture of unoxygenated and oxygenated blood. All right, so the next groups we're gonna go over are of course, the reptiles, and then of course mammals and birds as well. And I'm not sure we're gonna have in class lessons anymore. So if I don't see you guys, you have a good one and stay safe. And we'll keep your checking your email and Blackboard for communications.